Hi, welcome everyone. I'm excited to be moderating today's panel. We'll be having a panel discussion leading companies and workplaces in 2025. Today's business landscape, the most successful companies are those that intentionally design workplaces serving all employees while simultaneously driving historic business performance. Moving beyond standard leadership models or benefit structures, our discussion will explore practical innovations in workplace design, technology integration, and culture building that directly contribute to client satisfaction and competitive advantage. I'm David Chun. I'm the CEO and founder of Equilar. Honored to be your moderator today for this important conversation. This distinguished panel features senior leaders from global organizations recognized for workplace excellence. Fortunate to have representatives from cross industry. It's my pleasure to introduce Cheryl Rosario, head of DEI and CSR at Munich Re, and Khalil Smith, Vice President, Inclusion, Diversity, and Engagement at Akamai Technologies. Today, we'll be exploring how leading organizations are designing workplaces that balance employee needs with business objectives. Our panelists will share specific policies and approaches that have made their organizations stand out as employers of choice. So now let's begin. So Khalil, thank you so much for joining us. As a recognized industry leader in workplace culture, what is one standout policy or initiative that Akamai has implemented that you believe truly sets you apart from other organizations? Why do you consider Akamai to be a leading workplace?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, there's one that we come back to pretty frequently over the past few years. We rolled out a program called Flex Base. The Flex is for obviously kind of flex and change, base for base of operations. And it was our very deliberate intention to make sure that coming out of the pandemic, we had a workplace flexibility that wasn't necessarily kind of, home first or office first, but rather employee first. And so I think some of the things that set that apart are that we were really intentional about making the decision for whether a role was at flex or at office at the job level. And so I know in some organizations they've said managers can choose or teams can choose. We really wanted to take a step back and say, how might bias come into some of that? How might leader preferences come into some of that? So how do we look at the role as a whole? And I recognize that remote or hybrid is not right for every organization. But David, when you ask about kind of how has it changed the way that we're able to perform, we hear so many stories about employees that feel like they're better equipped because of their workspace, because of the way that they choose to connect, because of the way that they're able to get their work done, because of the way that they're able to really weave their work into the overall fabric of their lives. They get time back from not commuting. And on top of all of that, for us, it was very much a signal around trust. And so we said we trust that our employees don't need to be in the office in order to be able to get the work done. But on top of that, our senior leaders were incredibly intentional to say, we recognize with any decision there are going to be some trade-offs. And so if you're not bringing people together, you miss out on some of the serendipity of just being in the office where Cheryl and I happen to be riding in the elevator together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. What are you working on? And then it happens we're working on something that's symbiotic. And, before you know it, we're standing in front of a dry erase board innovating together. So how do you start to replicate some of that instead of just saying, oh no, work from home is fine? Connection is another one, right? The ability to say, hey, it's a beautiful day today. Do you want to go walk and take our meeting instead of sitting in this conference room or sitting with one another? And so we've thought very deeply about how do we build models and tools and habits that allow us to get the benefits of FlexSpace and to minimize some of the detriments of not bringing people together as consistently. And so we've seen, engagement scores go up. We've seen attrition go down. We've seen far more applications per open job. So all of the metrics are pointing to this has been a good decision for us because it's not just that single decision, but rather how that decision is woven into everything else. And I think in so many instances, that's what's incredibly important about the workplaces of today and the future is not just a single policy or program or decision, but rather how does that factor into everything else that you're doing so that there's real coherence.
Great. Thanks so much, Khalil. Cheryl, would you like to talk about Munich Re and build on that?
Great. Thank you, David. It's great to be here. Before I share an example, I love what you said, Khalil, about let's go for a walk. I was actually at one of our ERG events yesterday for women and health and wellness. And someone mentioned that when they schedule a meeting now, instead of scheduling it over Teams or even in a room, they schedule it as a walk. And I think that's just a terrific idea to get out, get into nature, and just another way to collaborate. So, love that example. I'd love to share one area that I think we've had a lot of strength in, and that is creating small spaces for our employees to really do a deeper dive. So we have something called Walking the Talk, where we do deeper dive on various inclusion topics, but we intentionally keep them small at about 15. And it's a way where people can really find a sense of belonging and go deep. We also have listening sessions with our employee resource groups like our Enable, focused on people with disabilities, or LGBTQ plus group. And that has been, again, a way for people to really feel like they have safe spaces. We started a book club where we have touched on various topics and, again, kept them small on purpose. And even though some of these things may sound like things companies have been doing for a while, I think they've been done in larger groups or opened up for questions in town halls and things like that. But having these small spaces and having groups work together, like our working parents and caregivers and our Enable, we just had a listening session focused on children, parents with children with disabilities, and just being able to share information back and forth. So I think when companies can create these small spaces where employees really feel like they can connect, they can open up, they can belong, that really creates not only a culture of inclusion, but one at a company that they feel cares and that they can grow, and it helps with not only recruiting but retaining employees as well. I think often as leaders, and I know myself, I've said this as well, like, how can we scale this or how can we make things bigger? But let's not lose the value of sometimes those smaller spaces. So we've been very proud of the smaller spaces we've created for conversations like this, and would definitely recommend other companies thinking about that and not always how we can scale.
No, that's a great segue for our next question. Talking about scale. So, what role is technology playing in enabling your workplace culture, and how do you ensure these digital tools enhance rather than complicate an employee's experience?
Yeah, technology certainly has been a key piece. And with AI, I think that continues to be a conversation for all of us. But one way that we've been able to use technology that I think has been really supportive, I mentioned a few minutes ago about our Enable ERG, and they've been great about working with our IT department and finding out what tools are helpful to folks with disabilities, often invisible disabilities or neurodiversity. And I think we don't always go deep with what technology is available. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the curb cut effect, where in New York City they did the sidewalks specifically for people with wheelchairs, but it ended up benefiting so many other people, like parents with strollers. And I think that's the same when we can tap into a lot of the technology options that we have and work with IT and figuring those out. Yes, they're helping people with disabilities, whether you are enhancing font size if you have a visual disability, or again using the notes functions and agenda and recording that may help for those that are on the spectrum or have other neurodiverse challenges. Then that is something that often helps all of us. I know I'm always looking for my reading glasses when it's small print, and so being able to tap into some of these technology options is really key. And I think we often take them for granted. So I love it that our a lot of our groups are thinking about what will not only benefit them but benefit the company and all the employees as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Khalil, love to talk about workplace design. So, how does your leadership team approach workplace design, And what metrics, KPIs are you using to evaluate the effectiveness of these initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of companies, we're taking in tons of information from a variety of spaces around things like who's leaving, who's staying. We do a quarterly pulse survey. I know different organizations do them at different cadences, but understanding from our employees what's working, what's not, asking really consistent questions so that we can better understand trends and themes. And so when we think about workplace design overall, for us, it really is a matter of looking at the entirety of the employee experience, all the way from the moment where someone maybe starts to consider Akamai as a place to work. And so we think about the applicant experience. Where are we getting applications from? Where are we not getting applications? Who's continuing through the application process? Who's opting out? Who's maybe being filtered out? So there are all of these kind of points along the journey that you can really disaggregate this massive employee experience into what about this? What about this? What about that? And really track the experience that folks are having along that journey. And then, of course, once folks become our employees, it's what's that onboarding like, and who's staying, and who's leaving, and who's opting out, and who's feeling really great about things, and who's getting promoted, and who's getting recognition and rewards. And so there's so much more data that we have right now that I think it's a massive benefit if you know how to use it and know how to leverage it. But if not, it can seem like a lot of noise and can be really difficult to find the signal. And so we've tried to be really deliberate about, we are a math organization. So our CEO was an MIT professor. He's got, tons of patents around how to make the internet work. And so, we get a lot of our personality from Dr. Tom Layton, who wants to understand the data and what is the data telling us, but also happens to be an incredibly emotionally intelligent and empathetic leader that wants to then turn that data into, so what does that mean for the individuals in the organization? And so I think being able to zoom out to the aggregate of the data across, for us, 11,000 employees, and where do we see trends and themes, but then also go all the way back down into, but what does that mean for Khalil? Because Khalil is one of the 11,000 employees, and Khalil hopefully is thinking about the people around him, but is also thinking about his experience and what does it mean to show up and be him. And so being able to kind of move in both of those spaces is the way that we think about workplace design. And we're incredibly fortunate that I, in my role helping to lead inclusion, diversity, and engagement, am benefited by having lots of leaders and lots of different folks that are always thinking about those same things as well. I often kind of make the point that if you work in an organization where only the chief financial officer cares about finances, you're hardly ever going to run a really effective business. Or if you work in a place where only your chief marketing officer cares about your branding, you're probably not going to kind of leverage the skills that you can. If only your HR team or your chief HR officer or your chief people officer cares about the employee experience, you're going to leave a lot of things on the table. But if everyone is thinking about that and trying to figure out how can we really leverage the tremendous talent that we have at our disposal, then all of a sudden you find that everyone is really moving in the same direction with different skills and competencies and level of confidence in those spaces. So your HR team still needs to lead, but we've really been able to find that by looking at the data, pulling those things together, going really deep with our people analytics team and others, and then turning that into real insights and action, that it really drives a different level of employee experience.
Great. Great. Thanks so much, Khalil. Um, so going back to you, Cheryl, here, what accountability or feedback mechanisms have you established at Munich Re to ensure consistent implementation of your culture, workplace policies, and values? And how do you measure their success beyond traditional business metrics?
So much for the question. Certainly, we do our employee surveys, those pulse surveys that I think most companies do annually, but we also have a way of checking in with our employees throughout the year through continuous conversations through our leaders and then some various departmental surveys. And we're really good about not just getting that information and then leaving it on the shelf, but then really using it. And as Khalil has talked about, like really looking at the data and what things do we need to implement and change to ensure that we are responding to whatever's come out of those surveys. But one of the other things that we've been really proud of is being recognized by organizations like Sarah Melt for our work, our inclusion work. And I think, though, working with a third party like that, it's a terrific exercise, even if you feel you're not ready as an organization where you will be recognized or on a specific list. Just going through the process of filling out a survey, the one specifically for Sarah Mount, it's over 4 month period. You're talking to all the different departments within the organization, from your procurement to your benefits to your training development, your talent acquisition, et cetera. And it's a really good exercise for you to kind of reflect on what you're doing. And then there's often options to get benchmarking and see where you are against other companies. And I think, again, it's great when you do end up being on a list or recognized or awarded for your work. But regardless, the exercise itself, I think it's a really nice way to just see where there are gaps and where you can improve. So we have found those to be very helpful. We've been recognized for our work with veterans as well. And that's been a great way for us to see the additional questions, to see some of the things that other companies are doing that we can also continue to enhance. So highly recommend not only doing your internal surveys, but also looking at those external opportunities so that you can really truly learn about best practices and within the field.
Yeah, and David, if I can just really quickly, Cheryl, I think it's such a brilliant point because so many organizations say, well, we're not ready to go have somebody else come in and inspect or work with another organization. And it's almost like saying, well, I'm not healthy enough to go to the doctor yet. I have to wait to get better and then I'll go get my physical. It's like, no, those companies are not there to judge you. They're there to your point, help kind of walk you along and say, have you looked at this? And what about that? And are you looking in these spaces? And if you take all of that as a desire to learn and grow, it stops feeling like you're being judged or that you've either succeeded or not. Because every organization I've spoken with, even the ones like yours that are winning awards and being recognized, have said, listen, we don't have it completely nailed, right? We're not done. We can't, yet write the full, complete book on this. We're evolving, we're growing, and the inspection is part of what enables us to do that.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, so we're lightning round here. So real quickly, key takeaway. What's your call to action for people following along here? How can other companies become leading workplaces like Akamai, Munich Re? So Khalil, what's your key takeaway?
Yeah, my key takeaway is I think increasingly I'm seeing more organizations that are deciding that employees are quote unquote just a resource again. And so whether that's leaning super heavy into performance management, super heavy into AI, super heavy into kind of, lowering their talent pool or being excited about, reductions in force. And I think that's really short term. And so the thing that I would encourage folks to do is to remember your employees, we say it all the time, are your most important resource. And they will help drive your strategy and your culture and all of these other pieces. So just don't get caught up in that kind of, pull of, oh, well, we'll do it with the technology. We don't need the people anymore. Your people continue to be incredibly important. Don't forget that and really embrace it.
Great. Thanks, Khalil. Cheryl?
I'm actually going to build on that because I was going to the people as well. That and not only remembering the importance and that they really are the drivers, but making sure that you're putting programs in place so that they want to be more engaged, that they feel again a part of the culture. And don't underestimate things like volunteerism, team building, creating those opportunities for everyone to come together to give back to the communities in which you live and work in, and just be a part of something. People are hungry for that. I think a lot of that happened prior to COVID. Some of that went away. Companies are starting to bring a little bit of that back, but a lot of it's been, sort of self-directed, go and volunteer. But bringing those opportunities back in-house where people can work together. You mentioned, Khalil, earlier, just, like, seeing each other in the elevator, like, not enough that happens. So I think making sure you're being extremely intentional and creating those opportunities will really serve you well.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Khalil. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your thoughts here and helping to kick off the Action for Impact Summit. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks
much,
so much.
David.
Thanks for the moderation.